We will suppress the human threat with naked, merciless force! Well, if you insist, I'll be right back. Wait, where are you going? Wait, when I say naked, that's not what I meant!
Hello, my friends, welcome back to Player Display for a review/retrospective. That'll make a little bit more sense later on. So here we have the Planet of the Apes, or better yet, the Beneath the Planet of the Apes General URSUS re-release. Now, before you get into the figure, it's a short review, so I'm going to start out by padding out for time, and first telling a little story. For those of you who've been on this channel before, you already know it. When I first saw NECA figures for the very first time, it was in, I think, 2014. That's actually the date of this mold. We will talk about that a little bit later on as well. I walked into a Mohegan Sun in Connecticut with my folks, and they had this really awesome action figure shop, which is sadly no longer there. But that was the first time I ever saw NECA figures. So you had like mainly Gremlins and Planet of the Apes. The latter being because that was when the new Andy Serkis movie came out at that time. So I picked up 3 Gremlins, which I still have today, and those were my very first NECA figures. But I still kick myself in the butt every once in a while because I did not collect a single ape from that time, and ever since then they've been extremely hard to get and very expensive on the scalper market. But then later on, this channel came to be, I think, like 10 years, a little over 10 years after the fact, and we did a few retrospectives. I reviewed the Toys R Us Gorilla Soldier 2-pack, as well as the Comic-Con 3-pack, which included Caesar. And those are some of my favorite figures that we ever reviewed on this channel. So that being said, kick forward just a little later, about a year, I think, they actually re-released 4 figures from the original Apes line. Not all of them, just 4. So that was Ursus, Zeus, Zira, and I'm pretty sure Cornelius. But even though they re-released them, same molds and everything, new packaging and whatever, for some, they were still hard to get. I wasn't able to pre-order any of them, even on BBTS. They just gone. Of course, on one hand, it makes me disappointed that I wasn't able to get them at a decent price, but at the same time, it made me happy that people were so invested in these figures that they were willing to get them. So it makes me happy that the fandom is so alive and well. So that does warm my heart a little bit. So anyways, here we have Ursus. How did I get this guy, and why am I reviewing him now, a little bit after the fact? Once again, I think I mentioned this on my Pod Plays channel, link in the description, of course, for Let's Plays, that I celebrated my birthday this weekend. Well, technically on Friday, but I was at the folks over the weekend. We went to the Newbury Comics, and they had 3 of the re-released figures. They had Ursus, another Zeus, and a Gorilla Soldier, but I didn't need those latter 2 because I already have the original releases, but I really wanted Ursus, so I had to pick him up. And the price was like the price of an Ultimate figure, but that was the cheapest option, so I'm like, alright, you know what, let's do it. I don't care that he doesn't have a whole ton of accessories, he's a damn good figure, and I had to take him out of the box early, and honestly, I love the thing. He's so good. The more I play around with him, the more I love him. So, anyways, before we get into the retrospective portion of this video, let's start off with the packaging. I said this packaging is new. I think it might be exactly the same. I think the graphics might be identical, but the bubble might be different, because I know some of the re-released figures, such as Zeus, he and Zira as well, they came repacked with variations of the accessories that they had before. I can't really totally speak to that because, again, I had none of the original releases, but all that being said, here's the packaging. Pretty simple. Again, it's not Ultimate, so instead of having that door that opens in the front like we're used to, instead you just have a straight-up window up in front of you, which is totally fine. Down here we have an actual photo of Ursus from Beneath the Planet of the Apes, the only film he was in, where he did make a very good impression in an otherwise mediocre movie. We got Planet of the Apes, though it should be Beneath, but that's alright. General Ursus with a nice little blue-purple motif. I'm not sure what that is, but it looks cool. Off to the side, we have a photo of the Ursus figure. I think this might be one of the differences. If my memory serves me right, I still have the packaging for the original Zeus and Gorilla Soldiers. On the side of those boxes, they had the little insignias that showed off their rank. So I feel like Ursus on the original box, he might have had that too. But now, because NECA has changed up their marketing a little bit, they instead have just photos of the figure, which is arguably better than you can see what it's able to do. Got Planet of the Apes on this side as well. Then a picture of Ursus and Ursus's name. Off to the back, we have the biggest spoiler there is, Planet of the Apes at the top, General Ursus once more for good measure, and a very quick little bio, which is pretty spoiler-free. And down here, we also have other releases in this re-released wave. So, yeah, Soldier, Zira, Zeus, maybe I was wrong, maybe not Cornelius. I actually, just before I did this video, I did find Zira, the original release of her, for a heavily discounted price, so we should hopefully be reviewing her later in the future. As for Cornelius, though, maybe in another year. We'll see how things go. But anyways, that's it for the packaging. Let's hop right into the figure. As I mentioned before, as far as I can tell, this is an exact re-release. All the same mold, all the same parts, articulation, unfortunately. It would have been cool if they retooled a few things like the elbows and the knees so we could move just a little further, elbows especially. But that being said, it's a damn good mold, a really good representation of early NECA at their best. And that's another good reason why we get re-releases, because some of the old ones, firstly, they're very, very freaking expensive, but second, if they do a second pass on these molds, re-release them with modern methods and new paint apps, they'll look cleaner, and there's less chances of QC problems. Fortunately for this one, there's not a single QC issue in sight. If any of you recall when I reviewed that Toys R Us Caesar 3-pack, which also came with Aldo and the Prisoner Gorilla, the Prisoner Gorilla had a really huge QC problem in the legs, and the leg fell out. I couldn't repair it, so I just had to glue it in. So that was a real bummer. But anyways, let's hop into URSUS over here. One of the most man-hating apes that we've ever seen in the franchise, perhaps next to Koba and Zeus. But over here we have an amazing head sculpt. As I mentioned before, I did a whole friggin' podcast on the Apes franchise from 68 to Kingdom? Yeah, because I did it the night that I saw Kingdom. And I'm an absolute sucker for the original 5 movies. I know the quality varies, but I will take the original movies over the remake trilogy, or quadrilogy rather, and the Burton movie any day. Mainly because I freaking love the practical makeup, and it is iterated so beautifully here in plastic. The sculpt is impeccable. I don't know what the paint app quality was, whether it was consistent or sloppy across the original URSUS figures that they released back in 2014, but here it's perfect. Nothing to complain about. It's got a nice little gloss to it, which I do think is accurate. Perhaps not as accurate on the fur, but then again, it gives it a little bit of that shimmeriness, so maybe that does help. But on the face, it's got a little bit of that too, makes him feel a little bit more lively, which I think is absolutely excellent. The eyes are perfectly symmetrical. You got the white, you got the irises, very gorgeous. I also really love the teeth here. And the mouth is slightly open too, so it looks like he could be barking orders or just chilling, huffing and puffing. The apes in the original movies did a lot of huffing and puffing, does that make sense? But then the most distinct thing about URSUS, aside from his personality, is the profile, where he wears this very distinct cowl, which I absolutely love. I don't know how practical it is. It's probably wicked heavy and could only hinder him in battle, I'd suspect. But I love this whole egg-looking leather design. I don't know what you'd call it exactly, but it makes this character especially distinct in a movie where he could easily just get lost in the crowd. Without this headpiece, you'd probably just forget this character ever existed, because he, as far as we stupid humans are concerned, he's just another ape, right? I also really love the sculpting over here for those little symbols. We don't know what they mean. We don't need to know what they mean. It's very seminal to the ape culture, so I really dig that a lot. I also really love the armor. It feels, now that I think about it, I didn't even think about this till now, a little samurai. I like the way that it's all like segmented into these little, I don't know, like these rectangular plates, I guess. And I suspect that would give him some mobility in the actual suit. And the figure itself is actually surprisingly mobile in the torso as well. Basically, the way this is done is it's one giant plastic sleeve over, not even a naked body, just stripped down cylinder of a body, kind of like what we saw with the very first Ultimate Ghostface that we saw, like last 5 years, I don't know. But yeah, if you can imagine that figure, it's pretty much what's going on here, and it serves this figure really well. As for the paint itself, absolutely gorgeous. They could have just, wicked over it with some brown, and we'd probably be okay enough. But the fact that they gave it an irregular, inconsistent patina makes it look outstanding, and you can see the contrast between the pants, then almost this dressing that goes across the shoulders with the studs on it. I love this design. This figure is an absolute testament to how forward-thinking this franchise was for its time, and still is. I think it's one of my favorite movie franchises of all time. Top 3, easily. Up to the shoulders, again, continuing with almost that samurai armor look. That is not a separate piece, to my surprise. That is actually molded right into the arm, and they painted right on top of that, which is great. I also noticed a black body glove, and unfortunately, this is where one of the weaknesses of early NECA does shine through. You do see that we have a single elbow, and it can't even hit 90, which is unfortunate for a character who really does fall back on arm gestures and movements to really command every scene that he's in. So it would have been nice if they went the extra mile. I'm not blaming them. I'm fine with just a straight re-release. I wouldn't have minded if they did what they were doing with, like, say, Universal Monsters, even the Predators that they've been doing, where they totally retool them, at least in the Predator's case, go into the elbows and make them double jointed. There is no reason why they couldn't do it here, because it's all just a black sleeve. They could just insert like a little picture a little oval-ish hole right in there. You have the double joint, and it could go all the way up, perhaps like right up to here instead of down here. And then he could be pointing up, because he does have a pointing hand, which I really love. But that being said, it doesn't ruin the figure. And again, they're apes, they're not Spider-Man or anything, so they don't have to be doing anything too crazy. It also has some gauntlets down here, both identical, very symmetrical design, I like that a lot. And he has a total of 3 hands. By default, he comes with this more open, relaxed, more gripping, I suppose, hand. And then we also have this gripping hand for his rifle, which unfortunately is not great. It looks good, but in terms of using it for his actual weapon, we'll get there when we do, but that, for now, we can talk about the details. Very nice gloves, almost a square design on top of it, looking very good, very matted, very rugged, just awesome, very befitting to this general ape design. Down to the pants, pretty basic, but not boring. I really love the texturing and the wrinkling. That's something that NECA always seems to get right. I think the earliest example I could think of, at least on this channel, is when we looked at the Ultimate Frankenstein. And again, that's a figure that you could have just made the clothing look very flat and 2D, and we'd probably be alright. But NECA goes the extra mile and always gets in those wrinkles. And this figure predates Frankenstein. It's the exact same mold. So the fact that they've been doing it then and ever since is really a testament to the quality. Anyways, down to the knees. Once again, single jointed in the knees, which is honestly fine. He doesn't need a whole lot of knee movement. And then down here, we got some boots. I like how you have all these little clasps off to the side. And, of course, you have the trademark almost 2 toes look. I doubt that they have 2 toes, but however many toes that they have, looks like they're segmented right down the middle in the boot itself to give you to suggest to you that they have some non-human anatomy down at the feet. Hands are the same, but when you get back to the head, you're like, yep, it's definitely a damn dirty ape in here. So, yeah, this figure is absolutely remarkable. Totally forgot to show off the back. It's all the same stuff. Extremely exquisite paint detailing where it's needed. And there might even be some very faint weathering on the boots. I could be wrong about that. Like, are you noticing like a brownish hue in there? I could be totally wrong, but I love this guy. I mean, I knew that I'd at least enjoy him in terms of looks, but once you get him in hand and you see the contrast between the metal plating, the leather garments, and the face and everything, this guy just feels very lively, very three-dimensional. This might just be recency bias talking. He might be one of my favorite NECA figures ever. I mean, I even have Dr. Zayas off to the side, the original release. Even he isn't nearly as detailed as him. I mean, not just in terms of them having different outfits, but in terms of paint contrasts and accuracy to the movie. I think this guy is a dead ringer. I love URSUS. Really great figure. Now, let's see what he comes with. Not a lot, but it does the job. As happy as I was to see the OG Apes figures back into circulation for like 2 minutes flat, which I could name and pin down on a calendar, I am a little bit disappointed that they couldn't at least give them the ultimate treatment. I mean, yeah, I get it that some of the figures came with less stuff originally, but it would have been cool if they didn't just come back bigger and better than ever with like articulation and stuff, but also maybe give them more props. I mean, it's a tough call. I mean, URSUS didn't have a whole lot of stuff with him, and he's shown very briefly, and he doesn't do that much, but you know, chunk him out, give him some extra lore like they do with some of the Predators and stuff. That could have been interesting. Or even just a few diorama pieces to build out your display. Like even just some sandy rocks or something. Or a horse. They could have given him a horse. We're going to try that later. But before we do that, let's have a look at the accessories he does come with, because they are all very good except for one little challenge. Firstly, we have the rifle, which I'm sure is the exact same mold that we've seen with the Gorillas and the original release of URSUS. I am a sucker for these primitive, but at the same time futuristic weapons. Interesting how that plots out, where they're done in a really cool wood deco, and they almost have this barrel over here, this magazine, which also acts as a secondary grip. One thing I wish that NECA would have done is maybe given the wood a wash, some grain. I think that would have looked really good. Just take like a few strokes of a paintbrush and it would be in there. It would look fantastic, better than this. But the mold itself is great. The issue, though, he can't really hold it. It's not a huge deal for me because I honestly prefer him with his other firearm or just his other hand. But as for the hand he comes with, which is meant for the rifle, the best I can do, I've tried this a few times, is you need to... And now I'm looking at this, I might have bent the trigger in there. No, that's where the index finger is. Yeah, there's no trigger in the where the thumb's supposed to go. But the best you can do is kind of just force that thumb into that hole, and it kind of stays there, but there's no chance for the other four fingers to fit into their respective slots. I mean, I don't totally blame NECA because the design of these rifles in the movies are just inherently bizarre and a little clunky, which adds to the charm. But in terms of translating them into, like, modern toy form, it's really hard to get them like in two-handed poses, at least for URSUS here. I'm looking at a gorilla that I have off to the side. He can hold his weapon in two hands. URSUS cannot. So not only can he not two-hand it, he can barely one-hand it. That's all thumb action right there. Everything else is kind of just hanging off. So that's the best I can do. If you really wanted him with it, I guess you could have it like off to the side. Even then, it's a little funky. Once again, these are not pinned. These are on very scary, although admittedly sturdy ball joints, as you can see right there. They have not changed that from the original releases. See, just a ball and socket, that simple. And we do have this alternate pointing hand, which I really love. And once again, continuing with that glove, remaining consistent, and as you can see, it could be either a good gesturing finger right there, or it could be holding his pistol, so we'll pop that in. That is my preferred hand for this ape. So you can do a little bit of pointing. You can also tilt the head a little bit, and he has some good emotion in there, a lot of vigor. I really like this guy. I can't say that enough. And then you have his secondary weapon, which I didn't even notice in the movie, but I noticed in screenshots after I picked this figure up and wanted to cross-reference a few things, his little itty-bitty pistol. And from what I've seen from shots, from replicas and stuff like that, this should also have a very distinct wood grain to it, but it's so small it hardly matters. But yeah, you can notice the very itty-bitty barrel, the trigger right there. As for getting in this hand, it doesn't go all the way down, but you can just shove it in. It will stick. It'll look okay. The finger doesn't go in the trigger hole at all. I'm actually okay with that, though, because I feel like it would just knock out the trigger itself, because it's such a thin piece of plastic. So you can just squeeze it in there, and he looks pretty good. You can hold it, like, just kind of chill down to his side, or he can extend it a little bit. You can kind of look down. You barely can call it sights at all, but yeah, you can look down, look like he's aiming it. That being said, let's move on to articulation, which we've already kind of talked about already, but we will go into it regardless because there are a few other points here. The head is actually surprisingly good. Not a lot down because of the beard. A touch up, not much. What does surprise me, though, is the tilt. The fact that he has any tilt at all is really great. I think that is on behalf of this soft material that makes up the cowl, so I do appreciate that. Has some swivel. You could probably go all the way around, but I don't think I'd want to bother with that. I'd be afraid of endangering the neck joint. Speaking of the neck joint, I think it's a dumbbell. I don't think the neck is its own separate piece. I think it's just a stump, and then the dumbbell popping right out, and then sticking right into the head. Shoulders, they didn't really have butterfly joints yet, of course, so as you can expect, it's not going to be here either. But the arms do a full 360, which is fine. They hinge up a little bit, not a whole ton because of the nature of the sculpt, which is alright. As we discussed with the elbows, they only come up to, I don't know what angle that is, but certainly up to, so nowhere near 90. But it does have a little bit of swivel in there, so you could change it up a little bit. And as for all the hands, all three, they are on a ball joint, so you can swivel. Have a little bit of tilt either way, too, if you want, so not so bad. You got some good options here. You could be clawing at someone. I don't know, whatever you want. Down to the torso, like I said, despite the way it looks, it is actually quite surprising because it's a glove going over kind of just a bare minimum cylinder of a body under there. So he can go forward a little bit, combine that with the legs. He goes a little further, goes that much back. So yeah, he's got all the forward and back you really need. And there is a swivel. I think it's about here. I think it's a diaphragm joint of sorts. So you can do all this rocking around wherever it is you want. So yeah, it's pretty impressive. This could have just been one solid piece, and this figure would be barely mobile at all, or just have a swivel right here, but no, there's a ball joint in there, so a lot more movement than you would expect, so very well hidden and very usable. Down to the legs, there is a thigh cut, although I do hear quite a bit of friction in there, so you might want to be careful. Maybe give it a little bit of warmth, up to you, but nothing stuck on mine, so that's what's important to me. You can kick out only this much to the side, which isn't a lot, but just enough if you want to get him on a horse, if you have one. I do have an example. Again, I'll show that to you in a moment. And then he has single jointed knee, once again, not 90, which is fine, and it does swivel as well. Not so bad. As for the ankles, these are also on a ball joint, so they do a touch back, a better amount forward, and of course, you got some rocker. Oh, and you can also swivel in 360 if you really wanted to do that, so not too bad. Before we do size comparisons, I want to add one last bonus. Here, some of you might actually recognize this. I have a gorilla soldier on top of like this kind of lame Jane third-party horse that I've given a little bit of a dull coat and stuff that I found on Amazon. If you want a link to those, you could probably just go back to my retrospective videos when I actually reviewed these gorillas and I got these horses alongside them. There would be a link in the description there. Hopefully they're still available. Perfectly scaled. Could probably use a little bit of paint, but they do the job. But really, any horse figure will do as long as it's within scale. It seems like his butt's a little stuck down there. I don't know why. Probably from the dull coat that I used on this guy. But anyway, so you can pop him off. Let's see how URSUS does. So we want to spread his legs as far as we can. Again, that's just enough. You don't need more than that. Actually, it's pretty good when you combine them both together. It's really nice, actually. Use a little bit of thigh swivel and take advantage of those knees. Bend them down, maybe swivel the feet forward a little bit for some accuracy. Get the arms out of the way. And boom, done. Easy, easy, easy. And then you also have this rig down here. I don't know, my horse anatomy or gear. He'd be pointing towards the forbidden zone. He looks great. Now here we are at a few size comparisons with some familiar faces. And as I was preparing, I actually had an interesting question come up, which I kind of promptly answered. I was wondering, if you're off in like the year 3000 plus something, why would it be that there would be a need for a general ape to begin with? By the time that Taylor lands on what he assumes is an alien planet, there are no actual enemies to the apes that we know of, unless there's rivaling tribes or something like that. But that's never alluded to or anything. So that being said, why would there be an army of the apes at all? They didn't know anything about the mutant people yet that were revealed in Beneath, so that's kind of an interesting gray area that's not totally explained. But then part of me was like, well, knowing what Dr. Zaius knows, maybe he keeps an army around as a failsafe should humans start to uprise. But which again would still be odd, because the humans, as far as we know, on this planet are pretty dumb and would never pose any semblance of a threat. So, I don't know, just an interesting question. A little bit of a plot hole there, but you know what? I still love the franchise. It's okay. So, anyhow, speaking of Zaius, here is URSUS's boss in the flesh. This is one of the original two releases. They released Zaius twice, or rather two versions of him. One had a more open look, and then this one's a little bit more buttoned up, I suppose. I think that other version of him was more when he was captured by Taylor, and he got a little bit raggedy. Then here we have one of the gorilla soldiers from the Toys R Us 2-pack. He's reappeared on several occasions. In fact, recently in an Ultimate treatment, where he actually had the third alternate gorilla head, which I actually do really like, but it's not essential to me. So if I ever come across it, then I might give it the time of day. But otherwise, it's mostly the same stuff. And then, of course, lastly, we have the Star Wars The Black Series, Quash and Mechamuk.
Mechamuk, you traitor.
I mean, Zaius sucks, but I did tell them I'm a Quackian monkey lizard, so they were kind of cool with me being here. So, yeah, you know, I just feel more safe with them.
Damn shame they're not wearing Beskar.
Oh, well, kind of dupes my plans. So, Quash, how about lunch?
In my excitement of reviewing this figure, I totally forgot one of the key features of it. You can also store the little pistol away in a holster that he has off to the side. So, and it fits in pretty snugly. It doesn't go all the way down, but that's pretty much where it needs to be. So, anyways, we'll just wrap up right here. No need for a turntable. I think you got a pretty good 360 by this point. Anyways, put him back. We'll zoom in, have a nice little look at the crisp details once again. And yeah, that's pretty much the conclusion of my review. Pretty much everything I wanted to say about this figure has been said. So happy he was re-released, but I don't know why he was so difficult to get along with the rest of the figures from the wave. But that being said, I hope they do the rest of them too. It would be nice if they re-release Caesar, the Prisoner Gorilla, and Aldo, for example. I mean, I don't need them at this point, although it would be nice to have a prisoner gorilla that is in one piece. That would be appreciated, especially because you could army build a little bit or something like that, as in Conquest. That would be pretty neat. But yeah, all that I can say now, which has already been said before pretty much, is as happy as I am that these figures are back, would have been nice to see better articulation and more accessories. That they got the paint done in spades. I'm not even concerned about that. The paint is certainly improved if there was any improvements that needed to be done, but since they're bringing them back anyways, it leaves some room for wanting a little bit more. So as a direct re-release, they did it just right, but considering all the upgrades that have been made in the decade after these figures were initially out, they could have added a little more. So unfortunately, I do need a dock points for that. But all modern updates aside, this is otherwise an excellent figure. I love this figure for what it was for the time, and you see a lot of little things here that you would see translated later on in the line. A body glove kind of covering an interior body that has all the bare articulation. You also have the wrinkles in the clothing and the undergarments and all that. Really good contrast between matte and gloss coats to show you the difference in material, fur, flesh, metal, and everything. This is just a very good example of what NECA can do. Pretty much almost everything that you'd want from a typical NECA figure is here, aside from modern articulation and a smorgasbord of accessories. But then again, the latter, it's more reserved for the ultimate treatment, which this isn't, so I guess you can kind of ignore that. But all that being said, this is an excellent figure, although unfortunately, like the rest of the Apes, very difficult to get. But if you can find it for a decent price, I do highly recommend him. Even if you pay the ultimate price for him, being around 40-ish, which is pretty much what I did, which was okay. It was my birthday. Fuck it, fine. He's excellent. If you have any love for the original movies, I think he'll blow your socks off. Really great figure. Give him a try, and I hope you like him. So, all that being said, thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed them, please, as per usual, be sure to
Like!
Comment!
Ring the bell to be notified of our latest arrivals.
And subscribe. The only good human is a human who re-releases a figure with better paint-ups.
Sorry, I'm trying to come up with these outro segues. Are they good? Probably not. It's a new thing. I'm trying here, alright? So, anyways, rock on, and I will see you all later.
Psst, hey you, yeah you, check out this other video you might like in our sister gaming channel. It would be real sweet if you did. Still waiting!